Welcome back live from Las Vegas here on the FanDuel set. Pro Football Today coming at you live from Las Vegas. So we're going to reset the entire game here. We've got Joe and Donnie here to help me through everything. And guys, we'll take one step back here and talk about where we sit right now. Obviously, the spread has gone up a little bit during the week, Donnie, indicating that there's a little bit more Niners money than there is Chiefs money at the moment. However, we all know that as we get closer to Sunday, is where the real volume of bets starts to happen.
And by the way, the interesting point, too, and it's fun to bring this topic up, Joe, as we'll talk about, and also Mike bringing it in, is where the money is actually going and pushing this line number. Opened up as that -3 opening number, pushed down for San Francisco down to around 1. Now we see it creep up to the 1.5s, 2s, and now 2.5 guys, as we see late in the week. But if you go to the FanDuel Sportsbook, they have an interesting thing where you can push on stats here to see where the money is actually going. How about this? 69% of the tickets and 76% of the money, Joe? The Kansas City Chiefs, the public favorite here.
Yeah, I could see that because of not just Travis Kelce, Mike, but obviously the Taylor Swift connection and Pat Mahomes being a two-time Super Bowl champion. I think people just believe Pat Mahomes can elevate this team to the next level. What I do find interesting when we talk spread and when we talk total, we've seen market fluctuations as it relates to the spread. No market fluctuation at all in regards to the total, sitting firm at 47.5. I like the over, but it is interesting that we haven't seen it move not even a half a point.
Yeah, sort of poured in concrete here on the total at 47.5, an extremely sharp number. And I think there is some correlation here when it comes to the number. I think if you're an overbacker, you're leaning Niners, and I think if you are under the number, you're probably going to go towards the Kansas City Chiefs. That's where I reside. A lower scoring game favoring the Chiefs. Donnie, do you feel that correlation has to be that way?
Absolutely, it does, Mike. And just to double down on that point, let's go back to where the line has moved there and getting back to that 2.5. I don't think it's going to get to 3 at this point. But even if we're looking at that public money, obviously the sharp public splits always make some sense. You have to check into those. But, Joe, I want to ask you this question. The opening line 3, we currently sit at the FanDuel Sportsbook at -2.5. Are we surprised where we sit at 2.5? And also the stagnation in the number where we're not getting a daily change here going up and down?
No, we're not. But I think we'll get some movement maybe heading into the weekend, Saturday, late into Sunday, right before kickoff. We might see 2s. We might even see 1.5s in regards to this matchup because it is Patrick Mahomes. I don't think we'll see 3 the rest of the week. I'd be shocked if San Francisco money pushes this up to a key number where the books might be in terms of a disadvantage in regards to that number and assessment. We saw with Baltimore, it was a different type of situation because of, in my opinion, Lamar Jackson, MVP candidate going up against Mahomes. If you didn't want to bet Mahomes, you could bet Lamar Jackson in terms of that public perception. That's why I thought you saw some late steam 4.5 in regards to that contest. I think we'll see this more at 2. I really believe that because the more you think about it, it's Patrick Mahomes against potentially the best team. But I still think Brock Purdy, based off the last 2 performances where he's had to come from behind guys, that's been maybe a detriment in regards to the spread not getting up to 3.
I'll tell you what's interesting about this, too, is, from a Super Bowl perspective, look, you want to do your handicapping. You want to have your own input here, and then you want to cross-reference things, Joe, right? You want to see where the public's going, where the line movement is. But, Mike, I'm going to toss it to you on this one, which I think is really interesting. The Super Bowl, more than any other football game this year, is what for us here? It's a public event, which means so many more bets are going to come in the Super Bowl than, let's just say, Week 13, Week 14, or even the NFC or AFC Championship game. Mike, when you're taking a look here at that spot, right, and you say there's so much public action, does that change your handicap at all, saying, whoa, a lot of public money coming in on this game, I better research my numbers?
I'd say yes to some extent. In general, not only is this just a public event, and a public event as far as the Super Bowl is concerned, it has an opportunity to be the most popular Super Bowl ever watched. A lot of people, it really is a Taylor Swift impact where you have people paying attention to football that perhaps are entering a sports betting market that they've never entered before because of other interests. So it does allow me to take a look at this. I think there's a lot of bets that are laid out in the Super Bowl, lines laid out in the Super Bowl, props and everything else that are sharp numbers, and people are more likely to bet overs. We all know public likes favorites and overs, and I think you have to really strongly consider, and something we talk about regularly on the network, Joe, even on a week-to-week basis. If you're going to be a sports bettor, particularly in the NFL, you have to get comfortable taking points and taking unders. You cannot be a favorite and over bettor exclusively.
Absolutely, and I think what you brought up as well, Donnie and Mike, and what he brought up in regards to what we're discussing is public, right? We talk Taylor Swift. Those people aren't going to enter the market Friday, Saturday. They're going to enter the market on Sunday when they get to the house parties, when they're with their friends. They're not monitoring these markets the way we are 2 weeks ago as soon as the championship games were decided, right? And we want to get the key number. The public comes in late Sunday, 4 or 5 p.m., right before kick. All right, what are we going to bet as a whole or as a group? And that's where I think you'll see maybe more movement as it relates to this 2.5 point number. And then I am curious to see how they perceive it from the total perspective, Donnie, because I'll go back to it again. I'm shocked that with Pat Mahomes and how explosive San Francisco has been in the playoffs in terms of just putting up 30-point performances, and we saw it again against Detroit, why this number hasn't really inched to 48.5.
Yeah, the game script, right? And we've been spelling this out all week long because obviously it's more fun to bet the over, but as Mike's bringing up, it's not necessarily more profitable just to take overs. You might find yourself saying, you know what, I think the game play is going to be slow. I like Kansas City. They're going to win this football game. It's going to stay under. So the correlation in the market. Now let's have a little bit of fun this week, right? You take a look, and we always say to ourselves, okay, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they're always in the Super Bowl, the AFC Championship game. They're used to the biggest moments. Kyle Shanahan has been here twice. But you know what we're reading here out? You get to Las Vegas. What is San Francisco not happy with right off the bat? We don't like our practice field. Not firm enough, already a little bit in their head. Now, if anybody read any press clippings from even yesterday, there was a false fire alarm in the early morning, which kept them up for an extra 20 minutes, which Christian McCaffrey wasn't happy with. The distractions, I feel, Joe, easier for Kansas City because they've been there, done that, and does it factor in, say, maybe San Francisco's just angry this week?
And I think it does factor in, Donnie, and this is how we think and how I think. Fast and loose, baby. Let's go into this ball game fast and loose. They're upset. I want to utilize every weapon I have right from the get-go. Maybe you look, and Donnie talked about it earlier in the week on this show, 23.5 a first-half number. We've seen that in multiple games for the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw a 17-7 game against Baltimore. We saw a 17-14 first-half number against the Buffalo Bills. And if San Francisco is going to start fast, that is the way to get Pat Mahomes out of his rhythm. Take Isaiah Pacheco completely, Donnie, out of this ball game. I like where you're thinking in regards to that, and that's why maybe if you do like the 47.5 like I do, back it up with the 23.5 first half number as well.
2 weeks to get prepared for this game, Mike, and this is what I love. You have two unbelievable game scripters here, two of the best offensive coordinators you're going to find in Kyle Shanahan and also Andy Reid. How are we looking at the first quarter? Are we looking, Mike, for a quick start in this ball game?
So last year, I took the first score in the first 5 minutes. Barely got there, 9 seconds left till that bet wasn't going to hit, but Jalen Hurts got into the end zone quickly. Because of the game script that I think is going to play out, which is heavy Pacheco, let's control the clock, keep San Francisco off the field, I wouldn't be surprised if we're 7 minutes in and we get a Harrison Butker field goal to kick things off. I could see that being part of the game script, but then the teams will get comfortable. I keep coming back to this. I like the second half total being under the 23.5, but I have to agree with Joe. I don't think these offenses are going to be off to a particularly slow start. I think it's about Kansas City trying to control the clock. But there's only so much you can do. I don't think this is a wildly dominant Chiefs performance. I just think they're going to try and keep San Francisco off the field. So I do like that first half over of 23.5. One more thing. On the emotion you were talking about. I'm telling you, before that Ravens-Chiefs game, Baltimore was on fire, jumping around the sidelines, screaming and yelling at one another, and it didn't do anything.
No, but the one thing that Baltimore didn't do was second-half adjustments. And they did it from a defensive perspective. They did not do it from an offensive perspective.
Run the ball, right?
Well, not just run the ball, but utilize the weapons that you do have. We talked about OBJ not being a part of that offensive scheme until it was too late. Fourth quarter, about 8 minutes left. That's where they lost the matchup, not just in terms of the first half, but they never made offensive adjustments. And I think when you're talking about the under 23.5 point number, it is going to be critical to see how this first half plays out, because Kyle Shanahan, a great game scripter in terms of the first 15 plays, Donnie, but what does he do in terms of the second half? You could do it against Green Bay, you could do it against Detroit. If you're trailing at the half against Pat Mahomes, that's going to be a lot of pressure on Kyle Shanahan. And in the past, guys, he hasn't done.
But you know what the interesting part about this game is, Joe, which again we sort of equate this, guys. The Super Bowl is a completely different entity. Now Usher's going to be on at the half, which means extended halftime. You have two unbelievable play callers, two very good defenses and defensive coordinators, Joe. Play me this angle. Are we getting a new look at the first half in the second half, if that makes sense, which means you can come up with an entire new game plan at the half, Joe?
No, I agree. I thought you were going to ask me how long Usher's songs were.
Well, we're going to get to that. We got a whole number hour too for that. Yeah.
He's got 13 minutes. At halftime.
13 minutes. Now, that's a good point. Yeah. If I'm Shanahan, I am not going conservative in the second half of this matchup in any capacity. Lead, no lead. You have to go down utilizing every option because of the pressure. I mean, his resume, his everything is on the line for Kyle Shanahan. You cannot go in and just limp to the finish line and allow Patrick Mahomes to win his third Super Bowl and get outdueled by Andy Reid and out-schemed. I think the one thing that when you look at it, Spagnuolo and that secondary are only giving up 181 passing yards per game. Who's going to be the player that potentially steps up to maybe blow right through this 47.5 and then get this game out of Kansas City's MO? That is what I'm concerned about. And early on, in terms of the first quarter number, I might take a shot in terms of the first half number and first quarter total in this matchup.
Mike, I've talked about it a few times this week already. I really love the first half over 23.5. And it's not just one of those hunch plays that you have. The numbers bear the fruits there. Both of these football teams averaging at least 14 points in the first half. Now, Kansas City averaging around a touchdown in the second half, when you see the San Francisco 49ers still averaging around that 13, 14 points in the second half. So it'll be interesting to see if those tendencies do change. And, Joe, just real quick on this. Tendencies as a look. Let's just say Kansas City gets that first kickoff. Are we looking at a 7.5-minute drive, an 8-minute drive, or do you want to see them get aggressive right out of the gate?
If you're Kansas City, I think it's better to be aggressive. You don't want to line up Pacheco and just run him into the line of scrimmage and maybe play for the field goal because of how explosive Brock Purdy and that offense have been in terms of come from behind back-to-back wins, and because they do have more consistent offenses and playmakers, Donnie. So I would like to see Kansas City be a little more aggressive. That's how they built the 17-7 lead against the Baltimore Ravens. So that would be the way to attack it early on for me.
I can't wait to watch it play out, Mike. It's going to be so much fun and so long the way it goes. We started this conversation off talking about that 47.5 and where that's going to wind up. It seems like it's the perfect number. And I don't know if it's like a high five for the handicappers, or should I say the odds makers that come up with the numbers. Mike, I think they nailed it.
Yeah, it's the sharpest number of all time. It's why it hasn't moved. I would add to the coaching conversation, Steve Spagnuolo, excellent in the second half for years now. Both of these teams' opponents averaging less than 8 points a game in the second half. So maybe out to a quick start, and we check each other in the second half. When we come back, we'll close out the first hour of Pro Football Today live from Las Vegas.